let's get going. Lin, how are you doing, man? We worked together. When did you come to Gruns? Like 2007?
2006.
2006?
Yeah, December 18th of 2006.
So I'd only maybe been there for about 30 seconds before you showed up. So we pretty much worked there for my entire run together. But
Yeah.
and and you are what would you say? I mean, like you kind of build your own role at Gruens, right? Like you kind of like get in there, get interested in what you're interested in, kind of move forward in whatever direction you're going. What kind of role are you in there now?
Well, right now, I do a lot of the electric repairs. I do a lot of the pickup rewinds and different things like that, and a lot of the electric guitar appraisals. I do the go throughs on most of those.
Cool. And so you've got a guitar on your bench right now that's kind of like I think a pretty good example of what you would see coming across your bench at Gruens. Like, is that accurate? Like, would you say that's pretty standard guitar for Gruens?
Oh yeah, we see a lot of the 50s and 60s, Fenders and Gibsons, and we see pretty much run of the gambit of your really cool instruments. So we see everything from the pre-war stuff to the newer stuff. So there's a lot of really cool things pass through and go over my bench.
So would you say that judging how human beings are, wouldn't you say that every guitar is actually pre-war at this point?
Well, that's you're exactly pre-Gulf War, pre-Gulf War Stratocaster.
Anyway, so let's see here. So that guitar. So let's say that landed on your bench. The first thing you're going to do is what? Are you going to kind of think about like a rough idea of what you've got on your hands, like roughly what year, what make and model? How would you? I mean, it's pretty easy to see that that's a Strat, but like I personally don't look at guitars and go, oh, that's this year. But like, what would you look at that guitar and go and kind of start the date naming process on that?
Yeah, well, the first thing, when you pick up a guitar like this, the first thing I guess I'm going to look at is body wood, because that's going to tell me if it's a mid 60s or mid 50s Stratocaster or if it's a later Stratocaster, because they changed the body woods from ash to alder in 56. So that's one of the first things I'm going to look at, and that'll tell me if I need to go up or down in that. And if you look at the earlier logos, your earlier logos aren't really a determiner because they didn't have patent numbers and all of that until 61. So you just kind of look at the body wood, you look at the pickup covers, you look at everything that's going on right here. This one has the Bakelite pickup covers and the knobs.
Can you hold that up to the camera just a little bit? Yes.
Yeah, and so you can see that it's got the very rounded, very played Bakelite knobs.
Is that like the telltale sign? Is that where like Bakelite just doesn't hold up quite like the modern plastic did?
Yeah, it's a very hard plastic, so it wears very quickly. So you'll see rounding on the tops of the knobs. You'll see the edges. You can see that the edges of the pickup covers have broken through just because of the brittleness of the plastic.
Cool. And so when you're talking about the detecting the difference between alder and ash, what are some of the things that you're looking for in that?
Well, it's just the major grain pattern, the grain difference between the two, because it's pretty evident on most alders that it's not an ash, because the grain, just the structure is completely different.
What kind of stuff are you seeing? Like big swirls in it, or straight lines, or?
You just see bigger, darker grain.
Bigger, darker grain.
The grain in alder is more subtle.
Okay.
So it doesn't pop out as much.
Oh, okay. So you're seeing more of a uniform look in the
like more of a uniform color.
Yeah.
Without all of the grain going through it and
okay.
everything. Every once in a while, you will get a piece of alder that's got a lot of grain going on it, but it doesn't have as much as your ash would.
Is there something in the weight too, or those pretty different woods in terms of like picking it up and going, oh boy,
they're pretty close to the same in weight in this era. There's not really I mean, you'll find boat anchors and you'll find lighter ones. So it's just depending on the piece of wood itself.
So you look at this and you go like the first thing that you notice probably is the pick guard doesn't have any plies. Mm-hmm. You know, you're looking at the color, you're looking at, and you're definitely in the 50s. So and then the Bakelite. And then what else are you using to kind of narrow down the stuff?
Well, that's pretty much, you know, when you're looking at it, that's a lot of it to get you in that thing. You know, the maple neck is definitely 50s. You know, you can look up and see that it's got a round string tree, and the round string tree changed in 56. So, you know, there's different things that your eye pops to that changed over the years to help you kind of guide yourself to figuring out where it is before even looking at the serial number. You can kind of give yourself an idea. And just by seeing a bunch of them, you know, in later years, you know, somebody walks in with a 64 Strat and holds it up, and you can look at the pick guard and see that this screw hole has moved. And you know that it's 63 or 64 because of that, the screw hole placement. So there's little subtle things that you can do from across the room that you can look at it and kind of put it into a small window of where it's from or when it's from.
Well, Alan said something about the plating looks different on different years, I would think. Is there something to the plating?
Well, I think that's a lot more with just the aging of plating. I don't necessarily see differences in the actual plating material itself. But, you know, I've seen uber clean ones that look like brand new ones, and plating is just completely different to, you know, the more aged pieces.
Danny's asking something. I wrote this question down. You know, we basically worked for the guy that wrote some of the earliest books for, you know, kind of going through this and knowing what year, you know, the pick guard screws changed or whatever. Is there any? So what are the books that you're going to grab when you're kind of like scratching your head and you're like, is it 63? Is it this? What books are you grabbing for that?
There's a lot of books out there. And the thing about it is I've never trusted just one book, mm-hmm. because if you look at the books, this book says this book says that, and they're close, but there's a lot of the books that they're very close in range, but each book says something kind of different. So there is like, you know, there's the Guitar HQ is one of the things on the web that I look for. There's the Andre book is another good one. There's, I guess those are the two main ones. There's the Blackguard book for Telecasters. There's a bunch of different books out there, and I like to look at all of them and cross-reference, just because that gives me a broader idea, because each one of them are like independent studies. So, you know, you'll get a little bit different answers with what you've seen to what this guy's seen. So if you take what everybody's seen and kind of put them together, it gives you a better idea. So I don't go for just one book. I try to go for as many as possible. And I also write everything down. So as I'm going through a guitar, if I see something weird, I take pictures of everything. So that I've got, you know, I've got a database of, you know, 10 years worth of guitars that I've looked through. And I note different things like, you know, this one has a mark on the bottom of the heel that I've never seen before that looks factory. So I'll make a note of that and, you know, watch for that. And you can buy different QC stamps and QC marks and different things like that. That can help you with kind of narrowing dates down. It's kind of, you know, a very small bit of, you know, information there that you've got to find from somewhere. But, you know, there are all sorts of little telltale signs that you look for.
Yeah. Would you say Fender is less, you know, of the manufacturers that are kind of valuable now? Would you say they're less uniform in terms of like seeing crazy stuff, and you're like, is that factory? And because I mean, they were just grabbing parts and stuff.
Oh yeah, they were grabbing parts, and also less like Gibson. You see things change over at Gibson a lot more at the same time on all the models.
Yeah.
And it seems like Fender was more, you would see them as things ran out. And with their different assemblers and things, this person would run out of these parts and start using the new ones, and that person would start using the new ones in a couple of weeks. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of when things were actually changing at Fender, whereas Gibson seemed to be a little bit more in tune with what they were doing.
As the values went up, I mean, that's got to make it really tough to, put a seal of approval on a bridge, or some saddles or something that you just don't know if they're original to guitar anymore, right? Because Fender was kind of all over the board.
And Fenders are easy for people to change parts, so it's getting harder to know whether or not that pot has been rewired or if it's changed. It's a 55 pot, like the volume pot in my Strat here, I replaced with a 55. And if I would have been trying to fool somebody, I would have just put the glob of solder right over the date, and you wouldn't have been able to tell. But I did it on the side, so the date's still visible, so that you can see that it's not an original pot for this guitar. But if you put a solder blob right on the top of that, it looks like the other pots. So there's a lot of things like that to look out for, and it's getting harder to do, especially with Fenders. But all the guitars across the board are kind of getting that way.
Yeah. Is it going to be, you think ultimately it's going to be something that the market just kind of throws their hands up in the air and goes, it's an old guitar, let's just get this thing sold? And
I don't know, I think there's already some dealers out there that are doing it that way. But I see a little bit of that. They're just it's a 57 Strat. We're pricing it as a 57 Strat.
beyond that, it's up for you to figure out. So I think that's fair too, because like at the end of the day, like, they're cool and they're valuable and everything, but they're for playing, they're not for looking at. And trying to make something like a factory built guitar like that into like the authenticity of pots, I think is probably a misstep. But what do I know? So we've done the exterior look of the guitar, and looked it over and kind of seeing what we're going to see from just kind of a general thing. And then is your next step to start tearing stuff apart and looking at nooks and cranny?
My next step is actually I try to test the pickups first before I dive into the guitar. And I've got this little gadget that I've made here. That's basically, it's just a jack. It's got 2 alligator clips on it, and you can just plug it into the output jack of the guitar, and you can test your pickups right off of the jack without having to open up the guitar. It's really handy on 335s and guitars you can't get to the pickup wires to make sure that they're working right.
Is this for liability, so that if something is not working, you can say,
that's one of the things is for liability, and just to make sure. And if I have any issues, I can go ahead and play with them right there. So if I get a pickup that's not reading or something like that, I can stop right then and there and play it for a second to see if it's just a dirty pot, whether it's a dirty jack. I can investigate a little bit before I actually open it up, so that I know that there's a problem before I get in there. Because if you get in there and then you put it back together and then the pickups aren't working, it's like, well, did they work before I took it apart, or did I mess something up? I'm going to
go ahead and jot down really quick that Dirty Jack is an excellent stage name. So let's see here. So you're testing the pickups, and I think that's really good protocol too. Like, I think that's like, even like, oh my God, when I was doing setups over in Brooklyn, like kids would bring in guitars for setups, and then you get into them and realize none of the pickups were working, or was like, your guitar is broken.
But you just said it was going to be a setup.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, see, at that point, you test the pickups, and if there is a problem, you can, make it known before you even get in there.
Yeah.
So that the owner knows that there's a problem before you get in there as well.
I think that's awesome. So, okay. So I misspoke on the next step. So I'm not even going to guess what the next step is. Why don't you tell me what goes on after you test the pickups?
Okay. After I test the pickups, I guess I put a capo on the neck and remove the neck.
Okay.
And I see people taking pick guards off without taking the strings off. And that just, I can't bring myself to do that.
Yeah.
I just see bad things, the possibility of bad things happening right there. You may never have a bad thing happen to you, but there's that chance in this business. Taking a chance like that, you need to be a little bit more careful.
So like those Bakelite guards, they've got to be pretty fragile. Like trying to fish one of those out underneath the strings, like, is the bad thing going to be like breaking the guard? Or
yeah, you can break the guard, you can scratch the guitar, you can grab a wire because you're fishing wires out of routes and things like that. You can damage wires. So it's just best to go ahead and either remove the strings, or what I do is I put a capo on the neck, and before I do that, I put a piece of leather underneath the strings, because I don't really want capo pressure on top of the strings with no pressure on the strings, because you can damage your frets, and you can also lose dings in your frets. So I always put a piece of leather in between it, just to kind of save that. And then you can, pop it up and undo your neck. And I've already got the neck loose on this one. So
you got any good tips for not dragging a screwdriver across the back of the guitar when you're taking it off? Do you use an electric screwdriver? Are you using,
I use mostly an electric low-powered screwdriver, but I also I don't do it all the way. And like when I'm putting it in, I don't like sink my screws all the way down. I always hand tighten because I think they sound best for some reason. It's been my experience that when I wrench down on them and really tighten the hell out of them, it seems like they don't vibrate as much. And it just could be me. I'm not saying that's gospel. I'm not saying that or anything, but from what I've seen, it seems to do something. So I will use the screwdriver a little bit, but I always finish it off by hand. And one of the things, I used to take off my screws and try to put them back in the exact same order that they went out, because I didn't want to mess up the threads. But then I realized that, like with a machine thread, if you're putting it in an insert, it's always going to go in the same threads because of that hard insert. So at one point, I don't remember, somebody may have showed this to me. It's been a while, but if you put the screw in and then turn it the opposite direction, about a quarter turn, half a turn, it'll pop into the groove.
Oh, really?
So it'll find the threads itself, and then you can screw it in. And your threads are always going to be the same thread, thread per inch. So if you find your thread and then screw it back in, you should have no problem with it. And at times, I've also gone through, if I'm pulling out a screw and I notice that it's starting to strip out, I'll drop a drop of super glue in it and let that wick down. And I'll let it wick down, and it gets into the threads and actually strengthens the threads, especially for like truss rod cover screws on something that you're going to have to take off and take off and take off and take off. It's really good to do that, because it strengthens those screws, and you can do it, every once in a while, and put a little bit more in there, and especially the ones that you're going to take out a lot. It just helps out.
That's a really good tip. I don't really deal with guitars like that much, but I think that's really good. I know that like whenever I tap MDF, I always like saturate it with super glue, and it's probably the same thing. Like, you're just making threads that are reinforced with the CA, and it just helps keep it solid. You can conceivably Eddie says drill bits too. Eddie, you have to elaborate on that. So you've got the screws out. What are you doing for this is like, like when you're dealing with old guitars, there are no, well, at Gruen's you probably could go get a new screw pretty easily. but what are you doing to wrangle your parts when you're doing this? Are you got a magnet tray, or what are you doing?
I just use at work. I have a tortoise shell. That's just a small little tortoise shell. When I'm doing the pull parts, I just drop all the screws in that shell and try to keep them up, because losing a screw. Ooh.
Bad news bears. Yeah.
So I did it once, and the customer was right there with me. It was a jack cup screw on a 50s Strat, and I picked it up and slipped out of my fingers and bounced and bounced and bounced, and we just watched it, and it disappeared.
Was that at the old shop?
Yeah.
That
was when you had your when I was in the bluegrass room, when you had your bench next to me.
Okay.
And we were sitting there, and it just bounced and disappeared, and I searched and searched and searched and searched.
Yeah, we were running things pretty rustic back in there in the day. I could see it getting lost for sure.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. I've lost a tuner screw before too, and it's just like nothing makes you feel like you got no business doing nothing quite like losing a screw on an old guitar.
Oh yeah. And check one thing you always check, because I think this is I don't know if it was that screw that I ended up finding there, but I lost a screw once and found it in the cuff of my jeans.
So
it was just right there the whole time.
I know, man. I know. It's crazy where they can go. It's crazy. Yeah. Like
they go with your socks, wherever that extra sock disappears to. That's where they go to.
Danny says he found one in his apron pocket a month later.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh my God. So, are there any good sources for, like, if you do lose screws, where are the screws coming from?
There's a couple of companies out there that I know are selling screws and things like that.
Well, if you can't think of it, when it comes to you, I'll post it on the Patreon on the interview thing, and we'll get that, because I definitely, it'll happen sometime in the future. I thought I lost a Country Gentleman headstock plate a while back. I flipped out. Oh my God, I had quite the meltdown.
I think the worst thing I ever lost was a white penguin inlay. No, white falcon inlay.
Oh
yeah, because I popped them out to do the refret, and the first one disappeared.
Disappeared?
It disappeared, and I've got no clue where it disappeared to. I kept everything, with everything, and that one inlay just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I had to make a new one, and when I made a new one, I had to make it a couple times because I made it look too good the first couple of times. Because they were pretty rudimentary looking, and you're trying to make it look right. Sometimes you got to make things look bad to make them look right.
Yeah, I remember banging out that DA guard for George, and complaining that it looked too good. It's like, well, we're gonna have to live with that, because I just spent a whole day on this. So.
Oh yeah, your miters actually meet what's going on.
Yeah. Anyway. But so getting back to the guitar at hand, so we're gonna now is the time to take the neck off. Are we taking the neck off now, or is there more stuff?
The neck off now. Yeah, let's get there now. So next comes the neck.
Can you tell? Oh, okay. Let's go. It's still good. The camera angle's still good.
All right. So the first thing that I look at is I pop off and look at the date, and this one's a 9/56. And then, you're looking at the finish and making sure that the finish looks right. And then on 50s necks, there's things that you want to look for. There's they put pieces of tape over the screw holes when they finished them, so that it wouldn't get finished down in the screw holes. And sometimes you'll see where they use the chuck of the drill as the depth stop for drilling their depths on these screw holes. You want to make sure that it's got the correct template screw holes, which there's a template screw hole there, and there's a template screw hole on the peg head. And it's got to make sure that those are in the right places and that those are actually there. And then from there, you look in the neck pocket.
Can we go back to the neck really quick? Is that like a UV tan line on there, or is that a smoke?
That's nicotine.
Nicotine?
Yeah, this is a pretty fun road worn bar brawler.
But you would see a little bit of a tan line there, you think?
Yeah, you should. I did see a uber clean 53 Telecaster this week that did not have any tan lines whatsoever.
Really?
But it was just so incredibly clean that it didn't have any. So it can have, a lot of tan lines, but you want to see a little bit of a tan line. So if it doesn't have a great difference, it just means it didn't get, a lot of UV. But a guitar like this, if you didn't see any tan lines, that would be really,
it'd be very suspicious, right?
Yeah, and it should have the tan line around the heel. It should have one around the pick guard. It should have one around the jack cup. So there should be some finish differences when you pull it up.
So is that guitar, is that waterborne, or is that nitro finish?
This is nitro.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess even before I get there, you got to look at the neck, the rest of the neck too, I guess. Looking at the frets to make sure that they're original. Making to see if there's lacquer still lipped over the edges of the frets, because they fretted the necks and then sprayed the lacquer over the top of them. Then you look at the logo. If we're going to go straight through it, I guess we'll just look at the neck first and go through, make sure that the nut's original. If it's got lacquer on it, if it shows tool marks because they weren't very cleanly done, you can always see tool marks on Fender nuts.
And you should see those tool marks.
Oh, you should see those. If you don't see them, and if the nut looks too rolled over, and if it actually looks like a rolled like a Gibson nut, that's not right. They should be pretty much flat on the top of them with a little bit of roll, but you should see sanding scratches on the top of them. Even the early broadcasters and early Blackguards, some of them were done with a 3-corner file, so they've got V'd out slots. And if you look at some of those nuts, they're very sharp and pointed.
What are some of the things on the logo that you can see that indicate that maybe a peg head's been tampered with? Like, should you see finish over the logo? Should there be a raise to the logo? Or
there should be a raise to the logo because the logo is done on after the finish is applied. So there should be a raise to it. And it also, the older decals were actually silk screened, and most of them today are ink printed or jet printed, or however you say that. They're not a true silk screen. So the printing itself is different layers on an original. So if you look at it, the black outer layer is a different thickness than your gold in the middle. So there should be texture and depth to it.
Okay.
And when you see the Stratocaster should be slightly raised up because it's paint on the top of the film. And on some of them, you can see that when you're looking at it, the logos are actually 2 pieces of film, because it's one piece of film, then the paint, and then a second seal to seal it in. So that's another thing to look at it. You can't see it all the time, but sometimes you see it and you're like, whoa, what's going on?
Oh, David is asking a question I wanted to get to too. Like,
right.
So what are some of like the monetary dings for the nut stuff, like the nut not being the original? He also asked about the frets. I know George has some pretty sage wisdom on originality of frets.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Well, these days it depends on the instrument itself.
Yeah.
So like this one right here is so binged and battered, nobody's going to want it with bad frets on it. So it's like tires. This thing got played enough to where it needs new tires. So if you want to keep playing this guitar, you're gonna have to replace that. And more than likely, through the years, that nut's been cut down as well to correspond with the times that it's had the frets dressed previously. So more than likely, unless you fill those nut slots all the way up and cut them back down, which we do at times depending on the instrument. Sometimes it's just best to replace the nut. You know, if you've got too much filler going on and all of that, it's just best to go ahead and replace it. So on certain instruments, it's a pretty good hit, but those are the uber clean originals, and like, you know, the 59 Les Pauls, people like to see original frets on those. So there's a couple of models out there that people like to see them uber clean and have everything, including the nuts and all of that. I think that's more with like first year instruments and holy grails like the 59s, 58s, and all that Les Pauls, the 54 Strats, the broadcasters, you know, the special years. I think people are a lot more worried about the true straight across correctness of everything.
Yeah. So on yours, like being so far away from being a pristine example, what would you say, like the difference between yours value wise and a pristine example? I mean, yeah, it's not a refend, so I mean, you've still got all the original, you know, doodads on it, but
yeah,
would you say a third, or would you say
by just having a refret done?
No, well, I wouldn't say the refret, but like just the condition, like.
Well, there's actually it's kind of weird because there's a new group of collector out there that's buying up the road worn and more bashed up pieces. It's like they're being more sought after.
Yeah.
Because, you know, people are paying more for relic guitars from the custom shop. And if you think about it, you know, the uber road worn ones, you don't really see those that often.
Yeah.
You know, when you see very played instruments, but the ones that look like the heavy relics, you don't really see that often or as much as you see the other ones. So there's a newer collector that's paying more for the road worn examples than they are for
you know, I think that's coming over from the automotive world too. There's a big push in car collecting that people are wanting all of the original kind of wear and tear on cars.
Like the barn find.
Yeah, you know, there is something to like sitting in a car that's, you know, hasn't been messed with since 1970. You know, maybe it's got some cracked leather or some, you know, peeling paint or something, but it's cooler than if you were to go through and just strip everything and, you know, bring it back to a factory look. Nate wants to know, do we have the collective influencing power to make it more widely acceptable for those guitars to get refrets and play well? All original first year, whatever doesn't seem that rad if it doesn't play like a badass. That's pretty much George's thing. Has George been swayed at all with the collectors, or is he sticking to his guns on original frets that don't play or are not?
Yeah, he's with me on that. And if it doesn't play, it doesn't play.
Yeah.
You know, and the only ones that I would say that I would worry about that are the uber clean ones that are it's original. You know, there's nothing that's been done to it, so we're not going to do anything to it, because there's, you know, starting to be less and less of ones that haven't had anything done to them.
Yeah.
And if you see one that's just, I mean, it's got all its original parts, and the finish is still so clean, there's hardly any checking on it. You know, that's a piece that it's sad to say, but that's more of a museum collector's piece than a player's piece. And there's less of those out there than there are of the player's pieces. So there's not many of them out there that I would say that I wouldn't refret.
Yeah, you know, and to be honest, you know, like I'm definitely on the side of every guitar's got a player or whatever, but I've seen guitars that would give me pause on doing refrets, even though they got a lifted, you know, fingerboard extension area or something like that. It's like, they're so clean. Like, why would, you know, at some point it even gets to me that perhaps less is more. All right, so getting back to this guitar, we were just about ready to take off the neck and look in the neck pocket, weren't we?
Yeah. All right. So again, with these, knowing how the instruments were finished, looking in the neck pocket is one of your indicators whether or not it's been refinished or not. It's one of the key things to start. There's a bunch of them, but that's one of them that you want to look at and make sure that the neck pocket is done correctly for the time period that it's supposed to be. And there's sometimes you're going to find dates in the neck pocket. Sometimes you're going to find signatures and different things like that. And it takes a lot of research to get to the point of knowing, this person signed at this era and this person signed at that era and different things like that. But you will find a lot of signatures in neck pockets and dates in neck pockets and things like that. So
also, this is where they're gonna hold the guitar for spraying, correct? Or are they doing the rotisserie thing at this point?
This was the rotisserie style. So they would drive 3 nails in the top of the guitar, and then they would spray they would put on Lazy Susan. They would spray the top finish and the side finish, and then they would, when it was dry enough to touch, they'd flip it over onto the nails, and that's how they would do the back finish. And they did that all the way up until 63.
Okay.
And then they started using the stick.
Then they started using the stick. So we shouldn't see any evidence of stick in 50s guitars, correct?
No.
Okay.
And if you do, it's possible that it's a refin from, there's a refin going on. And it could even be a factory refin, because if you send it in the 60s, they're going to spray it exactly how they were doing it in the 60s. So it may be a good looking finish, but it may also be a newer refin.
When did they switch to more of the automotive coatings? Were they shooting nitro up to a certain point, or?
Well, it was always automotive paint.
Yeah.
So
just automotive was using lacquer.
Yeah. And they were using lacquer, and they were using acrylic lacquers. Some of the colors are actually acrylics, like a lot of the DuPont colors are that.
Somebody's asking, are there certain signatures that are more sought after than others? Do any of them have that kind of mystique to them? Like this guy was always paying attention in the factory, or?
It's one of those things where it's most of the signatures you see are QC signatures. So even the Tadeo Gomez that you see in the early 50s all the way up to 56, they're not always his signature. Somebody would go out and, all right, well, Tadeo did these necks, and they just signed the whole batch. And you'll see them sign Thadeo, you'll see them Tadeo, you'll see them TG, you'll see them TG in script, you'll see them TG on the sides of the screw hole. So I mean, it's
poor Tadeo.
A lot of the ones that you see, it's not like in the late 60s when Abigail Ybarra was winding the pickups and everybody goes gaga over the Abigail pickups. So that's more of that right there, because that one piece was signed. This is somebody coming through and checking out the body and going, all right, my name's Ray, and I'll write that, like this one. If you look at the bottom, it's got RR on the bottom of it. And I don't know his last name, but his first name's Ray. And you'll see him all the way through the 50s and early 60s. Cool.
So what about transfer of lacquer from the neck to the pocket? Is that something that you look for too? Like, were they putting necks on wet?
That is one of the things that you look for. You look for transfer, pulling off of the neck and sticking on the neck pocket, and vice versa. Because differences in humidity and heat and things like that will make the lacquer sticky and make it stick together. So sometimes when you pop a neck off, you actually have to pop a neck off.
Yeah.
Essentially breaking the lacquer.
What's that like? I mean, some of those have been together for a long time, and you're the first guy breaking that joint. Like, how do you have any tips for breaking that, or is it a swift karate chop, or what do you?
I guess it's a case by case basis. you know, because you're feeling it and you're feeling how it's moving, if it's moving at all. And sometimes it's just, you know, a little bit of light knocking when you hold it to kind of knock it loose. It's been a while since I've had one I really had to wrench out.
Yeah.
But every once in a while you'll get one that's tight. And if it doesn't want to go, don't make it go.
Yeah.
And also do it with the pick guard off. More than likely, if you can, or the pick guard looser. Or one of the things that you run into, especially on like Telecasters, is the neck being too tight on the pick guard. And so you just got to watch how tight that pick guard is, especially on the Black Guard era instruments.
Are you checking truss rod at this point too? Or you?
Yeah, you want to check the truss rod and make sure that it works. You know, I guess when you've got the strings on it, when you're doing the initial check it out and see what it is, and then how much bow it's got, and then when you get the neck off, tweak it however you feel that you need to, and then when you put it back on, check it again. But you want to make sure that the truss rod works, because it really sucks when you get one and then all of a sudden you realize that, oh, this neck is backbowed.
That's a pretty common thing in the 50s, right? Aren't there like a lot of like dead straight to nearly backbowed, even without, you know, the modern refrets?
Yeah, when you think about it, it's maple, and for years and years and years they all had heavy strings on.
Yeah.
So they didn't even have like light gauge strings, electric strings, until the 60s, when they started using the banjo 10 and, you know, throwing out their low string from their 13 set. So these instruments started out with really, really heavy strings on them. And so now that everybody's using 9s and 10s, they don't have as much tension on them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see a guitar that's never really had the truss rod adjusted, and it went from 13s to 10s and had 10s on it for the rest of its life, it's going to have a lot less bow on it than with the 13s back on it.
Yeah. Are you guys heat setting the Grunes? Like if you get a backbowed Strat neck, are you guys heat setting it into place, or what's your?
Well, it depends on what it is. Like a maple neck, I don't really think that heat setting really does that much, if anything. But we will heat set some necks depending on what's going on. But a lot of, I've not really had that great luck with heat sets being permanent. I've had some that have been great, and then I've had some that pretty much went back to where they were after a bit. All
right. So next move, are we taking the picking guard off and seeing what's under the picking guard?
Next is to take off the pick guard, and you know, knowing how pick guards come off is one thing, because like you know, a Jazzmaster pick guard wants to fold out this way. Strat guards want to fold out this way, so you just pick it and lean it over, and that's pretty much it.
Lin, can you move the guitar? Can you move the guitar down the bench towards you just a little bit? There you go. All right, there we go. So Bakelite, is this a pick guard that you got to worry about the screw holes lining back up when you're done with it, or?
No, that's all the nitrate guards. It's all the green guards that you really have to worry with that about. If you're working with a nitrate guard, I work as quickly as I possibly can to get it off and get it back on, because I've had them actually, I've had them shrink on me and not want to go on once I get them back out, or they don't want to go back on after I've gotten them off.
Is there a remedy for that, or is that? I mean, is there a remedy for that, or are people heating them up and stretching them, or are you just hosed?
Maybe some people are, but that stuff is volatile, so I don't think I would want to really put heat on celluloid. I mean, if you've ever had making a tortoise pick guard and had that celluloid flare up on you, you know, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. I've flattened a few black celluloid guards, and it's just, oh my God, the difference between success and failure, and success and a real fire is it's tough.
Yeah,
business.
I know with a Gibson guard, you know, heat setting those or heat straightening those, you're not actually trying to stretch it back out. You're just trying to flatten it.
Yeah.
So trying to do a guard, a strap guard, and stretch it out would probably be pretty difficult.
Yeah, it'd take some kind of medieval torture device to do that, I think. But
yeah, and a lot of times, like with jazz masters and P basses and jazz basses, I don't take the pickup covers. Like I undo the pickups and I pop the pickup out of the pickup cover, and I leave the cover in the guard, because a lot of times if that guard has wanted to shrink around that pickup cover, and if you release that pickup cover out of there, your hole's just going to automatically shrink. So you've got to get in there and carve it back out and try to get it to where that pickup cover will go back on there. Ugh. And sometimes you can't get it. So I just started taking the covers off in the guard when I'm doing it, and it just seems to help out a lot more with getting things back together.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So boy, so you're looking at this this bunch of wiring here, and what are some of the things that you're looking for to kind of to say this is a square deal?
Well, I'm looking at the way that the wires go, the length of the wires, how it's wired, because you got to think that these people were wiring these harnesses all day long, so there should be some consistency with the lengths of the wire and how things were done. I'm looking to see if the wires were correct. A lot of the earlier Stratocasters have black wires on their switches instead of white wires, and that's one thing to look for. And you look at all the solder joints to make sure that they look similar. But you're going to find differences. You know, there's always been, I've always heard from folks, oh yeah, all of your solder joints have to be the same, or you've got messed up solder joints, and that's not necessarily true. Because like Telecaster harnesses are wired before they're even put in the guitar. So when they're wired weeks ahead of time by somebody else that may be using a totally different type of solder. So the joints on the pickup leads being soldered into the harness can look quite different from the other ones, because it was done at a completely different time. And if you look at like a Les Paul harness, you know, the entire harness was wired, and then when the guitar was done, they installed the harness and then wired the pickups in.
So wired the pickups. Okay. Yeah.
The pickups are done at a completely different time than everything else is. But also, while we're talking about Gibsons, you want to look at the way that the wires are installed on the pots, because they always did them, or pretty much always did them a certain way, with wrapping them through the holes and then soldering them. So if you see them and they're just pushed through, then you've got to kind of stop and go, all right, is that right? And then you investigate further. So sometimes there's things that you look at, and it's not necessarily that it's wrong, but it makes you stop and question.
So just things that make you go,
Yeah.
So what, I mean, of course, originality of the pickups is pretty important, but what are some other things that people are looking for originality in something like this for? I mean, are they looking for original caps too, or
original caps, original pots, original switch, and knowing when certain companies used which pots? Like in different eras, Fender used stack poles on Strats, and they used CTS on Telecasters. And you know, you got to think of you know, this is a factory, so everything that has screw-on knobs like Telecasters and jazz basses and all that, they're probably going to get the same type of pot. So you'll see the same style of pot in that, and then everything that has the push-on knobs will get a separate style of pot. So that's one thing to look at, is to make sure that it has the right type and style of pot. And different guitars, like your Jaguars have 1 meg pots. Your old lap steel, some of them had 1 meg pots, which aren't used in most Fenders until I guess they used 1 megs in Telecasters starting in '69.
What were they trying to do with those different pots? Were they actively trying to change the tone of the guitar, or?
Yeah, they use the brighter ones on the steel because it lets more treble through.
Yeah.
So use the 1 meg brighter pots, and it just lends to a brighter sound. So, I actually realized this the other day. I got a guitar and I wanted to wire it like it's a 55 Les Paul special that somebody had rewired, and I wanted to rewire it like a Les Paul special. And I went through and did it, and it completely changed the sound because I wired the tone control differently. And it's the first time I'd ever, done that and realized that, how big of a difference something like that can make, because it's going to make your frequencies roll off differently.
Yeah.
And I changed it back, and I was like, oh yeah, there it is. So it was wired like a Les Paul custom instead of being wired like a Les Paul standard. And the tone controls are differently wired on those.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I like the acoustic guitars is you just grab a fistful of neck and just give it hell. And there's just so, like I can't, you got amps, you got pots, you got pickups, you got this, you got that. Just, oh my God, too much. But no offense. I mean, it sounds like it's just the right amount of stuff for you. But pot codes. You want to talk a little bit about pot codes and what you're looking for in there?
All right. Well, sir, what you're looking for is you're looking for the pot to be of similar age to be in that instrument. And more than likely, the dates on the pots are going to be a lot of times earlier because they had to get them from the factory. So it's going to be earlier than the rest of your parts, but it can also be somewhere around similar. But usually you're going to find that your pots are a little bit earlier. And you can have pots that are of different dates on them. It's not the most common, but you will find it at times. And there was even a time where Fender was switching over in Stratocasters. I think it was in '63 that you'll actually find stack pole and CTS pots in the same instrument because they were crossing over. But one thing you want to know about is the fact that pots had part codes starting in the late 50s on Fenders. And if you see a 56 pot with a part code on it, it's not a Fender pot. So there's a lot of people out there that are selling pots on eBay and things like that. And they say Fender Telecaster pot. And you look at it and you're like, then why does it have a Rickenbacker part code on it? So knowing the different part codes and different things like that can really help you out with knowing. And that's all about, watching things and taking note of what things are moving and changing.
Tyler's asking deoxit on vintage parts. Is it too aggressive, or is it all there is?
No, I've been using deoxit for years, and it's always done me good. I've never had a problem with it messing things up. I did use another brand, and I threw the can away because it messed up the finish on an old Telecaster. I sprayed it and it blushed the finish, and I wouldn't even spraying it around. I've got a little cup that I used to push it down in the pot, and a little bit of it squirted out and got on the finish and kind of messed up the finish. So deoxit has never done that to me. So I've been using it for years without a problem.
Tyler, have you heard something about deoxit? Is there new information that we're not privy to?
Some people scoff at it. They'd rather take the back off the pot and clean it like more gently. I don't know. It's mostly snobbery, but it's whatever.
Wait, taking how many times do you got that before those tabs are done? I can't.
That's crazy.
Well, there's also a difference between cleaning a pot and going in and doing a hardcore repair on it where you're actually repairing the wiper.
Yeah.
So there is a difference between just spraying out your normal gunk, and then getting in there and cleaning out. Because I have done that before on pots that just would not clean off. I've had to get back in them and take them apart, but that's not really something that you want to do very often.
So, I mean, are you able to replace the wipers or the contacts or anything in there, or is
no,
it?
you just kind of there is. I've heard of people putting stuff on the contact to make it do, but I don't know of a material that I know of that you can paint on or whatever that will stay. That's as hard fast as the old stuff that they would use on there, the old carbon.
Yeah. Let's see here.
You've got to cannibalize parts if you want to do that. You got to pull parts out of old pots.
Yeah.
Danny West observed fucking nerds. So anyway, I agree with you, Danny. That's some nerdy stuff, but whatever. It's probably what's holding them back artistically, I would think, is having original pots. Their timbre. But so anyway, we've got the all of the electronics kind of that thought about and looked at or whatever. Is it time to pull out the black light, or are you?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't know anything about this stuff.
Well, not yet. Basically, you go through. Now you want to look at. See, I've looked at the wiring harness. So I've looked at all the pots and figured all of that out. And now I just want to look at the pickups, and you want to look at the way that the wires come through the holes. You want to look at the solder joints to make sure that they look like they've not been reflown. You want to make sure that the tape that's on your leads is still there, which the tape on these leads isn't there anymore, because this pickup's original. This pickup I had to fix, so I unwrapped it, 10, 15 winds and found a break, and then redid it in. And then this one I had to rewind. But you want to look, and all these things were wax potted, and they were wax potted with the leads on. So you want to see traces of wax on the leads. You want to make sure that you see that there is wax down in the holes. There's different things that you want to be able to see when you're looking at that. And so, like when I do pickup rewinds, I always like to do them from the pickup. I've seen people cut leads, which just aggravates me. I've seen people desolder them from the switch and the pot, but I just like to take them off from the pickup leads right at the pickup itself, so you're doing less damage to the whole harness. So I'd rather have 2 redone solder joints than 4 redone.
4, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So after you figured that out, you also want to look at look at it and make sure that the coil wire is the right type of wire. You want to make sure that look at to see if your tubing is right. I've already replaced my tubing, and they didn't use springs until the mid '60s. So you want to see that tan tubing until then. But then pretty much you're almost ready to go into the black light room.
What kind of value hit is it to have a rewound or repaired pickup on a guitar?
Well, I'm not the best on pricing. I
don't care about that anyway. They're for playing as far as I'm concerned. But
pricing, I do originality. I don't really do pricing.
Yeah.
So,
George just makes it up as he's going along, right? Like he's got, since he's the E.F. Hutton of the guitar world, he can just go, I think $200 off. That sounds
$257.
I think it's going to affect it adversely. But you've got a George impersonation, don't you?
No, everybody has. That's how he met his current wife.
Oh yeah, did a George impersonation?
Yeah, she did a George impersonation to him because she thought he was someone else. So she did an impression of him to him. From the story that I've heard anyway. It was like backstage at the Opry when they met, and she did an impression of him to him.
Is that Eric's mom?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so we've got the pick guard back on, and now it's time we're talking black lights.
Yeah. And
Are you gonna blacklight that with the pickup on and off and all that kind of stuff? And
you know, I forgot to bring my black light down.
don't worry about it.
Give me a
Let's talk
second,
about it.
I can run up and get it real
Yeah,
quick.
go grab it.
Yeah, hold on.
We'll all smoke cigarettes. Way to go. Taylor, you got any cigarettes?
Only joints here in Seattle.
Only joints in Seattle.
That was a joke, by the way.
I wonder, like in the states where it's legal now, what do people get paranoid about?
All the cocaine they have.
Yeah, everybody, it's Danny West's birthday today. He thought he was 33. It turns out he was only 32 though.
Happy birthday, Danny.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Dan.
Thank you. I'm laying.
All right.
I'm laying in bed.
That's
Yeah, trying to introduce us.
Here we go.
All right. So one of the things that, you know, you got to discern is whether things are just dirty under black light. Because when like a black like this one, it's going to have a lot of black spots on it.
Have a lot of lindew on there.
They're not necessarily real touch up or anything like that. It's just a lot of dirt and funk. But let's see if this will.
I'm not gonna lie, that's tripping me out a little bit.
But you can see all the different. This one's been polished so much and worn through that you can see all of the different layers of the lacquer going down, and you can also see the huge nicotine layer on the top of everything. But you know, black light is not a 100% thing.
Yeah.
Because as you know, Ian and I were talking yesterday, and we are talking about how a 20-year-old reef in is going to black light, you know, like a really old finish. But let me see if I can set this up and get some shots of how dark the headstock is.
Yeah, let's take a look at that headstock. Is there anything in the logo that you look at for black light? Like, so that logo is popping.
Yeah. Whoa.
It's popping and locking there.
But you can see how much nicotine and dirt and grime is on that. And the worst place to find that is right on the back of the neck, because a lot of times the back of the headstock will glow differently from the rest of the neck because you don't touch the back of your headstock.
Yeah.
You know, you touch the back of the neck, but you don't touch the back of the headstock. So there's a lot of times you'll see a darkening of the headstock because it's funky and dirty and hasn't been cleaned, and you've wiped all of that off with your hands playing it over the years.
What's your so if a guitar came into Gruen's in this kind of condition, what would George's policy be before that went up for sale? Would he want that nicotine off of there?
You know, a lot of the guitars, it just really depends. I'm trying to dissuade that, but just because there's the new age of collector that kind of wants that, you know, in the olden days, you know, people wanted the clean instruments.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing people more wanting the road warns. I mean, they're paying so much money for all the custom shop stuff.
Yeah.
So the real road worn pieces, you know, you can see that's got missing lacquer and funk everywhere.
Do you know the history of this guitar, Lin?
I don't. It came from Mississippi. It was played in bars in Mississippi for years.
So it's dirt road worn.
It could be from down on the crossroads. I mean, it looks like it could have been played by Robert Johnson's cousin.
Oh yeah,
I clean them if they get sticky.
So
if they get sticky, they should be cleaned. That's my
if it feels funky and feels gross, then it should be definitely clean.
David brings up a good point about removing the nicotine too. would you find it's almost like when somebody's put like their we would get some of those guitars in that somebody had painted their cowboy stage name on, and you'd be like, boy, that guitar really doesn't work for everybody else except for them. And then you'd take their name off and then find that nice that suntan of the name still on there. Like, is that the same thing with the nicotine? If you take that off, is there weird tanning underneath that?
There can be, and sometimes it's really weird how like I just had one 2 or 3 weeks ago that I didn't remove all of the nicotine. I basically got it to a point where it was clean, but there was still a layer of nicotine over, but it wasn't sticky anymore. But if you put any sort of polish on it, the nicotine would reactivate. And I tried cleaning it, and it just wouldn't go. So I had to get it to a point to where it was clean and it wasn't getting funky anymore.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of, like, nitro being so accepting of other nitro, you would think like it's probably going to be open for negotiation with a lot of things like nicotine and stuff like that, where it's just going to like take it, kind of take it in and absorb it into itself. Like,
yeah.
Like,
and
some
I
of
have
those,
seen that too, where you start cleaning it and the finish is just gooey.
yeah,
itself.
yeah, they've become one. There's a lot of Martin finishes that are like that, where, body grub has just basically turned, this distinction between body grub and finish has become blurred.
Yeah.
What do you do about old lacquer that goes gummy? Ian Pender asks, and I guess we were just talking about that. You get it to a certain point, and you're like, I guess that's the way it goes.
Yeah. And you see that a lot on necks. They just get gummy, and you just got to get them to a stage to where they're not gummy. Some of them, we've had them before. We had that P-bass that was at the old shop that the finish had gone gummy and it stuck to the case.
Yeah.
So to get it out, we actually had to take a razor blade and cut the finish, or cut the hair out of the case.
Yeah. Whatever became of that? There's kind of not much.
It got totally refinished.
Refinished, yeah. There's not much beyond that to be done.
No. Oh, do you remember that one that we got? It was like one of the varnish finished Collings, and the guy brought it in to sell and drove it all the way here from like 12 hours away. And then when he got into the shop, he decided he was going to go eat somewhere before he brought it in. So he left it in the trunk.
Oh no.
And then when he brought it in, it had gotten, so it was like August or something like that. And when he brought it in, the case had stuck to it because all the varnish had reliquefied pretty much because of the heat.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty much brand new guitar before he brought it in, and it had to be completely refinished because of that.
Yeah. Boy, there was all kinds of sad stuff going on there from time to time.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, got a couple questions. Do you want to get to the Les Paul, or do you think we covered? I've got you here we're coming up on an hour.
Yeah, well, I can pull the Paul down real quick and we can look in it.
Yeah, and I'll ask you a couple of the questions here. So, a couple of people wanted to know about forgeries. Have you seen many forgeries?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen a good bit of forgeries over the years.
What? How compelling?
There have been a couple of them that have been pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And then there's some that you look at them like, what is this?
Like somebody brings in a Mexican road worn that they've.
Or you see one of those weird CF mountains.
CF mountain, huh?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me grab the Paul real quick. All right, I'll just show you the top of this one really quickly because I really like road worn guitars. So this one's another barroom brawler.
Where's your inlays at?
Well, that's one of the things I do when I do refrets on these old guitars is I always remove the inlays.
What's your move for taking those out?
Well, a lot of Gibson inlays just pop out.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, and you can use a little bit of heat and a little bit of steam. You don't want to use too much because it'll make them curl.
Yeah.
So a little bit of heat, and you can get these Gibson inlays out without too much problem. But you only get one chance to get the look of those inlays right, and you sand them down, and they just never look right. If you get them too thin, they never look right. So if I can get them out safely, I like to remove them just because it makes it look so much better when they're done. And it's keeping the original piece. It is a lot more work, but it's better for the instrument itself.
Yeah, yeah. What year is that, Paul?
This is a 53.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is serial number 190 or something.
Why'd you break that headstock?
Because I was mad at you.
All right. Let's see here.
Damn it, Ian.
All right. So what are we doing? What are we doing on this one? Are we looking at looking it over? It's got that funky gold patina.
Oh, you funky gold patina. Taking me back to high school. Well, first of all, you look at the finish and make sure that the finish looks like it's good. The key things are to make sure that the edging on the binding is done right, because they did it as a process. So you want to make sure that that's a scraped edge and it doesn't look like a taped edge, because there's a complete different look to a taped edge than a scraped edge. So you just want to make sure that that's looking good, and a lot of finishes you look at and go, yeah, that's just no question. That's a good looking finish. And if you've got to go further than that, you want to look for things. And you'll see spots where they scraped it and then had to go back and scrape it. So you'll see like little gouges out of the binding right at the bottom where the binding meets the wood. And
Lynn, would you say what gets your hackles up more, like kind of messed up guitars or ultra clean guitars?
I don't really like ultra clean guitars. They make me sad a little bit. I like ones that have been played.
Do they make you suspicious? Like, are you out of the gate more suspicious with a clean guitar? Like, are you looking at it kind of cross-eyed, or are you more suspicious with beat up guitars?
Well, I guess it's the same with both.
Yeah.
You look at the uber clean ones and your first thought is, wow, that's clean. And you got to look it over and look for certain things to make sure that everything's, going good before you feel comfortable with it. And with a road worn guitar, you got to kind of look at the wear. Is it real looking wear? Does it look like it was done with a screwdriver? You got to look at it as, is this original wear or not? And I guess that's where I start with the uber dirty ones, is making sure that the finish looks like it was naturally done that way. Okay, well, I interrupted you again. So where were we at? You were looking at the binding. Yeah.
And what else are you looking at? Like,
well, with that, I know the serial number, so I'm going to be looking for like with a 53. I know that the studs and the bridge are different on 53s than they are on the later years, because the earlier wrap tails had thinner wings on the sides or the edges, and they broke very often, so they thickened them out. So that's one of the things you want to look for with a stud tailpiece 53. You want to look at the knobs to make sure that the right style of knobs, the pickup covers, make sure that they look right. Your switch ring, you want to make sure that your switch has the right type of nut depending on what year, because the earlier ones just have a nut on the outside, and starting around 57, I want to say maybe 56, 57, they started using one that had a collar that actually went down on the body, because they were having problems with the pin that goes through. Well, one thing that I think is a reason why they changed is the pin that goes through that it actually rocks on the earlier ones. You screw it down and the pin's down below it, and so that pin can work itself out over the years. So you'll get a switch that tumps to the side and all of that. So that collar goes down over the pin, so the pin has nowhere to go back.
Nowhere to go, captures it, huh?
So you don't have that problem with the rocking switches in the later ones that you do have in the other ones. So you look at that, you look at the headstock on the Les Paul. You want to make sure that the Les Paul is an actual silk screen. You want to make sure that it's raised above the finish, because it was done after the guitar was pretty much finished. You want to look at the logo and you know, the positioning of it, and make sure that it's the right logo and all of that, whether it's the right material or not, whether it's a silk screen or whether it's a pearl logo. We'll look at all the edges and make sure that they don't look nice and rolled over. Fenders is a different deal, because you want to see rolled edges on fender necks all the way up until 55. They were not really block sanding, so your edges on your headstock are a lot more rolled in the earlier years. So that's a good indicator.
Going over.
Yeah. And you know, when I first started off, I always heard, "Oh no, if you see sanding scratches underneath the finish, it's a refin." And I see sanding scratches underneath the finish. I see factory splices. Fender necks got factory splices a lot, right on the heel where the neck curves to the heel. The router would catch that spot and take a chip out. So they just take the bandsaw or belt sander, and plop a piece of wood on there and let it go.
Did Fender even do seconds? Was that even a thing, or were they all just? They
would fix them and let them go.
Let them go, yeah.
If it was a second, they tossed it or whatever. But you'll see, you know, putty on 50s Fender necks. You'll see splices. You'll see factory splices on Gibsons. A lot of the you'll see it a lot on the maple, like J200s and different things like that. The maple body guitars. You'll see splices where the wood cracked when they were bending it. So they'll just put a splice in the cracked area and finish it up. And, you know, years later, it looks like, hey, there's a splice there. There's a factory splice. So you just want to make sure that everything looks right to the eye. It's kind of hard to say more than that, really, about the finish looking right.
David wants to know, how much sanding are you going to do on that board? You know, like, it's something that comes up a lot, you know, like, because boy, you know, like, you would like it to play like a 10 top Paul Reed Smith when you get done, you know, everything in perfect working order, but there is like a little bit of less is more and some different splitting and stuff. Do you have kind of a rule of thumb on what's appropriate to take off a board?
I take off as little amount as possible. Mm-hmm. So basically, you know, I see people doing refrets where they mark their boards with lines and try to get, you know, their X's and lines and things and try to get the board completely flat. But I don't care about the whole fingerboard.
Yeah.
I care about where the frets are. So if, you know, right here on the fret, it's level, but it's dipped in the center, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I care about where the fret is. And also I like to leave as much fingerboard wear as I can, because it's part of the history. Yeah. And if I can get away with it, if the board's good enough, if it's a good enough radius, I won't plane the board at all. Like maple boards, I do those all the time without planing them. And with those right there, fender necks are very inconsistent in the 50s and 60s because of the way that the fingerboards were rolled in the factory. They had a little rocker arm that they rolled them on. And so when they did that, it did a 725 up at the nut. But if you gauge them down at the end of the fingerboard, it's like a 6.
Yeah.
So it's like an opposite compound radius.
Yeah.
So that's why everybody always says,
so
that's why everybody always says, you know, fenders choke out. It's because it's rounder on the top of the fingerboard than it is down by the nut. So what I do with that is I refret it all with a taller gauge, taller fret wire. So I use one that's about the same thickness as your standard fender wire, but I use a slightly taller one, and then I plane the 725 all the way across all of the things. So I try to take out the compound radius on the fret tops.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tricky business. I definitely, like I'm with you on that. Like I try to keep my, like my expectations of fret levels. Like I don't like them to rock, and I want, each set of 3 frets to be, even with themselves down the
Yeah.
board. But that, like on a lot of those, if you were to chase a perfectly flat fingerboard and perfectly flat, like in the old days of like marking the top of your fret with the Sharpie and then blasting them all down to level. Like I think on a lot of vintage guitars, you just wouldn't get there, and
Yeah.
you'd wind up destroying a lot of the fingerboard trying to get there.
Yeah, and somebody asked about the fret size. I
Yeah.
saw that pop up. That right there, I'm using the StuMac 155s, and they're like 80 wide and 50 tall or something like that. And
That's
the regular
tall.
ones are like 40 tall.
40,
So
yeah.
they're just a little bit taller. And once you actually plane it down right, it doesn't really feel much different. I also use the 155s on my veneer boards because I like to do as little board work to those because I don't want to take off much material. And those have shorter tangs on them because I've always wondered if they use the same wire starting out, and then when they actually press it into the fret shape, that's what dictates how deep your tang is and all of that, because it all starts off as the same material. Maybe true, maybe not. It's my theory, but I use the taller wire with the thinner or the shorter tang in it, so that I can not have to cut down as deep in the fingerboard, and that also gives me room on the top to plane more out of the top of the fret. With
taking material off the bottom of the tang is that's some real fun work right there.
Yeah, I had to do that with stainless frets once, and I won't do that.
Boy,
that again.
By the way, Jesscar has I think Jesscar is supplying Plek with their fret wire, so there's some 80 by ginormous fret wire available from Jesscar too.
Nice.
But I think their tangs are pretty robust depth wise. How do you match the look of the untouched oily rosewood board with the freshly sanded areas after the fact? You gotta move for that?
Well, I guess mostly it's I scrape it when it's done, and it's kind of hard to say because it's kind of a case by case type deal. Hey, let's try this. I don't really, I guess, have a standard. I do have one of the things that I use very last. I have a rag that I've been using for about 16 years. And it's what I use at the very end of all of my fret jobs. And so it's saturated with fingerboard oil and all sorts of funk and gunk. I mean, it used to be blue, and now it's like this dark gray color. And I basically wipe all of my rosewood and
so you got a magic rag is what you're saying. So
kind of sort of. I guess that's my
Tyler, get you a magic rag.
Yeah.
Just that simple. So I know a lot of guys are talking about Renaissance wax. Are you using that at all?
No.
I don't know if guys are using that on fingerboards or not, but
no, I also sometimes will buff fingerboards and then use that rag over the top of it. Like on fender necks, a lot of times I'll buff them and then use that rag to degloss them a little bit, because it does
take that wax back down.
Yeah, because it does have a slight grit to it now over the years, because it's filled with polishing compound and all sorts of stuff.
Gun guys use the Renaissance wax. Yeah, the acetone application, that is Mark Stepman's move, but I haven't been bold enough to try that yet.
I've done acetone. I've done acetone before, and it works pretty good.
I do buff my boards. I use a hand drill though, with like one of those Home Depot buffs, and then there's a lot of different kinds of buffing compound too. Like I definitely like buffing to a really aggressive wax.
Yeah,
like, I don't want to put like a high shine on it.
Yeah, I use the Menzerna red, and I use it on the wheel that we have is not a very good wheel. Basically, it's very sloppy in the way that it turns. The belt's not tight on it, so it drags very easily. So it's perfect for applications like that because I can stall it and give it as much as I need to. So it works out really well to use a kind of shoddy wheel for doing that.
The buff I got for my drill from Home Depot came with this black compound that's pretty nice. Nice. It's like more aggressive than the red, and it seems like it imparts some of that blackness to it. Let's see here. Alan says he's been buffing with his black wheel. Yeah, it seems like too, like if you have like a buff that's dedicated to fingerboards, that seems to help too, because it stays pretty coarse from picking up all that metal stuff. I'm not a big fan of buffing frets. Like I definitely don't buff to bring a high shine on my frets. It's really more about the fingerboard. But yeah, the buffs pick up that metal and kind of get a little chunky.
Yeah, my buffing pad is also pretty soft, so it's not rigid at all. So once I push into it, it just splays open, and it's very easy to work with, and it's not very harsh on the fingerboard and the frets.
Tyler wanted to know, he also had a question in the pregame, like looking at old guitars that have had old finish work, what are some of the telltale signs? I'll say, Tyler, if you're working, I don't know what Lin does with this, or if this is something that they've got at Gruns now, but on Martins, checking top thickness, is a really good one. Like if you have like even a Hacklinger gauge, I think is probably accurate enough to tell you if the top's seen sanding. But do you have any tips for detecting like old work that is hard to differentiate from original finishes?
Yeah, sometimes you can't tell. Sometimes it's old enough to where they blended into each other, but you just kind of have to look at the different colors, especially if you're looking under black light and you see something that's just barely off. You look at the edges, you look at inside of the repair, and you can look in a bigger spot. So if you got a spot like this that looks like it's done, you look more in the center to see if somebody was trying to hide it by spraying more than they needed to. You look for the edges mostly, and you can see the difference between finish that was laid on top and then finish that's worn through. If you look at the edges, you can see the difference between like wear through and spray, because there's going to be more of a spray pattern on the edges. It's going to be less of a consistent line from wearing through. So it's you got to look at it to see if it is true wear through or what on it.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking a little bit about a guy that we worked with or almost worked with, who I guess you worked with him, but he was.
No, I didn't. He came in a couple of times to help out for a couple things. But
yeah, we worked with a fella that was, or knew a fella that was messing with pigments for touching up to avoid blacklight detection. And I will say, if Tyler, if you're running around and you're looking at expensive guitars, get an LED. I think more than just this person has been messing around with doing some fraud with blacklight pigments. So one of the things I noticed is that the LED blacklight it showed off a lot of that blacklight work. And then I forget, maybe it was on my Instagram, I was talking about that with somebody. Somebody was saying that they had a blacklight that would actually sweep a sweep a series of frequencies and go through several different frequencies, and that'll show off a lot of that stuff too. But yeah, did anybody watch that newest Netflix movie on art fraud? Oh my God, it was so good. I love shows about art fraud. It makes me so happy. People paying too much money for pictures. It just thrills me to no end. But does anybody have any other questions for Lin? Lin, do you have anything more you want to talk about on the Les Paul?
I guess the last thing that I'll go is, checking out body routing. Knowing that your body routing changed a little bit for different years, the way that they ran your ground wires and different things like that changed over the years. So like the earlier ones with the wrap under tailpiece had a different ground routing. Actually, they had two different placements for the ground routing in 52 and 53. And you'll actually see those bodies being used up until like 54 with the tailpiece ground routed in it, but not drilled. So knowing the routes and when routes changed and things like that, it takes really getting in there because there's really no books on that. It's mostly about just seeing what you see on each one and kind of going from there and taking notes, man. I take notes on everything. And that's so important on this, especially like if you've got a question, you can go back and go, all right, well, I saw a 54 Les Paul, a year ago. Let me go look at the pictures of that, and you can pull up pictures and go, all right, well, that's that and that's that. So,
what's your opinion on conversions, guys taking those early 50s and turning them into
I think that is blasphemy.
It's pretty bad, isn't it?
Leave those guitars alone.
It's
Les Paul Jr. was never meant to be a Les Paul. It's a Junior.
It seems like something history might frown on. I don't know. I could see like some of those guitars, you could make a case for them needing a neck reset, right? Like there's a lot of the 50s that kind of have bummer neck angles. Yeah. And I think but yeah. That's
different from a conversion though. That's actually making it a more playable instrument and using the original things. Cause I'm a P90 fan. I love P90s.
Yeah.
So it makes me really sad when somebody takes a great P90 guitar and routes it for humbuckers.
So what's the worst thing you've seen done to a very valuable guitar? Was it when I hosed that sunburst down with acetone, or have you seen?
That's probably one of them. The acetone sanding that made you throw your back out.
Yeah, that was an awesome day.
How about this?
What's happening there?
They decided they didn't want to have a switch. So they made another cutaway.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So that's exactly what you want to do to your 56 Les Paul Special.
So there's two different definitions for all original, isn't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've seen some pretty heinous things done to.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. It's been so long. I can't remember some of the crazy stuff we saw there, or that I saw there. I don't know. You ever see a Floyd on something that didn't need a Floyd?
I saw an L00 the other day with a humbucker.
A humbucker, you say?
Yeah, it had a humbucker and a tailpiece. And the guy was talking about how it doesn't need a neck reset, but instead of having a saddle and regular bridge, they put a tailpiece on it.
Oh my God!
The action roller. Yeah, and it had a humbucker on it.
All right. Well, I think that about does it. Anybody got any more questions? Definitely, Lin. I'm gonna go going once, going twice, going three times, and then I'm gonna say, Lin, thank you so much, man. This was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Right on.
And everybody give Lin a round of applause, because I think you just got like a lot of good information.
Very fun. Big fun.
Thanks, guys.
I know. It's definitely like something it's like pulling teeth for me to pay attention to any of this stuff. So hearing somebody talk about it's easier for me than cracking a book, because cracking a book would just make me go to sleep on a lot of this stuff.
I can't do the books. You know, I'm the type of person that I have to have things in my hands and prove it for myself.
Yeah,
kind of deal.
You got to touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
But and certainly working at Groans, I mean, it's repetition there. Like you're gonna see it there.
Oh yeah, we see all sorts of things come through.
If you don't see it
now,
there,
we had the prototype for the Flying V and a 58 Flying V show up on the same day.
that place.
You
That's
know?
what I tell everybody is like working there was like it was the like you'd see something that like maybe you'd go your whole career never seeing maybe one of them somewhere else, and you'd see it at Groans, and then the next day another one would come in.
Yeah, that was the electric, the 30s electric upright Gibson bass. There was one known, and then one came into the shop. So there were two known, and then like 3 weeks later, another one
showed up. Why not?
Yeah.
Just crazy there. All right, Lynn, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. And
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, we'll talk. We'll keep things going. Everybody. Iris Carr is on Saturday, so we're gonna be talking about violin restoration. If you have any questions at all about violin restoration, leave them in the Patreon or DM me, and I gotta start sorting together what I'm gonna ask her, because it's gonna be a good one. All right, Lynn. Hey, take care, man.
All right, y'all have fun.
Okay, bye.